Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And I can't thank you enough for joining us. I've got a feeling the morning may be starting out a little slow for you this Friday. That was a long speech by former President Donald Trump. I'm trying to look here. Is my screen? There we go. It didn't look like the screen was working. 92 minutes? Something like that. We're going to be talking about it. So not as many virtual waves coming in this morning as I imagine some may have overslept watching that speech. What did you think of the final day of the Republican National Convention? We're going to take a deep dive into it. Also, in the media, there is a back and forth that now perhaps President Biden is receptive to stepping down. But then there's defiant. He won't. There's this back and forth, anonymous source after anonymous source. Another reason why you have to always take an anonymous source with a grain of salt. So we're going to be talking about that, but I would love to know what you think, or what you thought, I should say, about last night's speech, or any of the speeches. First off, on a very sad note, undoubtedly you have heard by now, but one of the, if not the last great, legendary comedians of, maybe you could say, the Carson era, Bob Newhart, has passed away at the age of 94. He was working right up till the end, really. Somewhat recent episodes of Big Bang Theory and some other movies and such. You know him from the Bob Newhart Show, Newhart, Bob. Just a master. Put on maybe a little bit later on the button-down mind of Bob Newhart, and you'll realize how it still holds up. It's still hilarious. Nothing better than seeing an old clip of him on the Carson Show. So Bob Newhart, sadly passing away at the age of 94. He lost his best friend, Don Rickles, a few years back. And he lost his wife, Ginny, back in 2023. His wife, Ginny, of 60 years. They were married. Newhart is survived by 4 children, Jennifer, Courtney, Timothy, and Robert, and numerous grandchildren. So Bob Newhart passing away at the age of 94. So yesterday's convention, we're going to take a look at the takeaways from CNN, from Fox, from elsewhere. Oh, and yes, you recall early on after the debate performance by the president, and it's been called disastrous, whatever term you want to use. We had said on this program it will take the kind of the Nancy Pelosi's, the Obamas, to persuade him to leave, because the decision ultimately is up to Joe Biden. So now, again, it's all coming out through kind of backdoor channels, but it's been reported that Pelosi asked him to step aside, Schumer asked him to step aside, and now, as reported yesterday, Barack Obama has asked him to step aside. So there is supposedly, which we'll get to, an all-hands-on-deck meeting within the campaign, and some speculating, some even reporting the New York Times, which, remember, the New York Times wants anybody but Trump. They have admitted that they do not have to be fair, that their ultimate job is to make sure Trump does not get back to the White House. So now they're reporting that he could be out as soon as this weekend. I don't always believe these reports. That could be something to put pressure on the campaign, but that could very well be the case. Do you think, well, who knows, maybe it could happen this morning during the show, but do you think when we go on the air Monday that Biden will still be in the race? We're going to talk about that in depth. And I see that Senator Ted Cruz may be watching, frankly speaking. And the reason I say that is he made the point last night at the convention in an interview that we've been making all along, that it's never been about Biden's health. It's still not about his health. They don't care about his health and what that means for the safety of the country, or in the country in general. They turned on him when they saw the polls and it looked like he couldn't get reelected. So it's all about being reelected, nothing to do about his health, safety, and the safety of the country. So we'll talk about that as well. Let's start. Oh, one other thing, just a little housekeeping here. Angela Daniels will be joining us a little bit later on to talk about the Salvation Army of Corning. I'm a proud member, chairman of the board of the Salvation Army of Corning, and I've mentioned a few times on this program that there was a real struggle this year because kettle numbers were so far down. Kettles during Christmas time, synonymous with Christmas. The numbers were not great. And that doesn't mean the Salvation Army isn't doing everything that they always do. It's just, it is a real hardship. So they're holding some fundraisers, and we're going to talk to Angela about that a little bit later on. Okay, let's take a look. What did you think about Hulkamania coming to the Republican National Convention? I thought, and again, probably after the first break, we'll talk a little bit about what the media is saying are the takeaways. But Hulk Hogan tearing off his shirt in typical Hulk fashion to reveal the Trump Vance tank top. And of course, and I don't, you can't really quote Hulk Hogan because it makes it sound like you're trying to do a really bad Hulk Hogan impersonation, but saying such things as, well, let me tell you something, brother. And yeah, see, I already sound like I'm doing a very horrible impersonation. But this is his first appearance at a political convention, and he stood, and I thought it was a good idea that he came up there and said, I'm not here as Hulk Hogan, but I had to give you a little taste of Hulk Hogan, and he sure did. I didn't come here as Hulk Hogan, but I wanted to give you a taste. I'm here tonight because I want the world to know that Donald Trump is a real hero. He said, and then Franklin Graham coming up after Hulk Hogan saying, I have the hardest job tonight. I have to follow Hulk Hogan. Yeah, not ideal placement for Franklin Graham. I thought he did a wonderful job as well. We're going to be talking about all that. Wow, okay, I was wrong. I said everybody's going to be sleeping in this morning, and yet the waves are coming in, the comments are coming in, which we'll get to when we come back from break. Boy, what a moving tribute to the fireman who lost his life at the Butler rally. What a unifying speech. Now, the media hated it. The Biden campaign, the Democratic Party hated it. And there's a reason for that. Because it was powerful, it was effective. Now, I could have this morning just said, hey, let's play the speech in case you missed it, and that would have been the full show nearly. 92 minutes. They're saying it's the longest nomination speech in, I guess, history. I don't know how they know that necessarily. But there's just so many takeaways from last night. We're going to show you the media's reaction on it as well. Let's take a look. Let's start with CNN. CNN said on a night Republicans projected bravado around the ticket, Donald Trump started the primetime address by displaying a rare vulnerability, saying, I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Yes, describing what happened. Another thing I thought was very powerful when he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I am going to tell you this story once, but it's too troubling to talk about, so you're not going to hear it from me again. It was a powerful, powerful message about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. The former president saying, I stand here, or I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of God Almighty. I also like when he said, I'm not supposed to be here tonight, and the crowd started chanting, yes, you are. His tribute to Comparator, built on a theme of empathy, the Trump campaign has cultivated throughout the week, with stories of the former president reaching out to the Gold Star families and showing compassion. And just to show you how, what's the word I want to use? Pathetic the media can get. Maybe that's a strong word. They're saying, well, when he brought out the fireman's uniform, well, the name was spelled wrong. The name was spelled wrong. As if that means, hear me out before I explain why. If that means that he doesn't respect the man and what he did. He relaying how he's talked to the family. So I just think that's so disingenuous and just looking for a reason to attack. Now, it is said that the fire department that provided that or the family, but it was the fire department who has said, yes, we spelled it wrong because we couldn't fit the full name on. But looking for conspiracy theories, there's a good piece I hope I can get to later on about how MSNBC and other outlets have really turned into conspiracy theory headquarters, comparing it to QAnon with what they're saying about the convention and what they're saying about Trump. But we'll get to that later on. So that was one of the takeaways that CNN provided. The next, little mention of Biden by name. Yes, there was originally, we were told there was never going to be a mention of Biden, but I believe the former president brought Biden's name up once. I think this is also kind of a rude way of putting it. Another takeaway, a rare Melania Trump sighting. Yes, she was there. That was nice to see her. Then they mentioned Trumpomania running wild with Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt and having underneath the Trump Vance shirt. There was introductions by Kid Rock and Dana White, the CEO of UFC. There's a strategic reason for it. Republicans have long won male voters, and the Trump campaign has paid particular attention to trying to narrow Democrats' massive advantages among non-white men. What does that mean? But Hogan's speech might have been one of the most memorable moments of the entire convention, in part because it so perfectly embodied the story Trump has long sold. Hogan briefly broke character to tell the crowd his real name, Terry, I can never remember how to pronounce this, Bollea? I should know that. I apologize. And much like Trump, described himself as a professional entertainer who couldn't stay on the political sidelines. I've known the man for over 35 years. He's always been the biggest patriot, and he still is. He's always told me he's always told you exactly what he thought, and he still does, brother. And then Hogan finishing off. Again, I'm not trying to do a bad impersonation, saying, all you criminals, all you lowlifes, all you scumbags, all you drug dealers, and all you crooked politicians need to answer one question, brother. What you going to do when Donald Trump and all the Trumpomaniacs run wild on you, brother? And then finally, CNN says it was a nearly policy-free convention. So that's the quick look at what CNN had to say, but what I want to hear is what you had to say. Did you stay up for the whole thing? 92-minute speech. What did you think of all the speeches? And let's also ask this question. Now that the RNC is over, what to you was the highlight of the whole convention? What was your takeaway? If you think it was Donald Trump's speech, then give me a number 2, because Donald Trump should be the number 1. But after that, what did you think was maybe the most powerful, most important part of the convention? But we've got to take our first break. We're just getting started on this Friday morning edition, and we're hitting the ground running, so stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So many comments coming in early this morning. Yes, says one viewer, CNN said Trump was old, rambles, and false reports of 2020, just as we thought. Yeah, it's so predictable. It really is. As I've said a million times about events like this, they have their articles written up well before the event even takes place, in my opinion. They have their talking points that they are going to use. Next, Hulk reveal was cool and great. President looked grateful and even blew a kiss. I know. I think the Hulk was a neat one. It was just something really completely different. Next up, Tucker was okay. Eric Trump was better, hitting every single bullet point. President Trump was slightly different from before the shooting. Speech was okay and hit the bullet points of his regular campaign speeches. I struggled to stay awake. Yeah, I think that the timing, not the president, the former president we know, has no problem giving long speeches. Some of those rallies last a very, very long time. But I think because it is so late at night, I did too, trust me. I had to do a lot of recapping this morning. I thought Eric Trump did good. And I do agree with you, and many people have said it even that talk to the former president personally, that he does seem different, but you can't have your life stay exactly the same after surviving an assassination attempt. So it should come as no surprise. I've heard the word used, stoic. He looks much more stoic and reserved. Another comment from a different viewer. So as I was watching the RNC convention, I'm convinced that Biden will not be on the ballot. Why? Well, it occurred to me that because the Democrats have become so hateful and crafty, they will stop at nothing to win and will soon appoint their nominee when they pay off Joe to leave, and the Republicans will have already had their convention, leaving little opportunity for discussion on this nominee, and leaving less than 3 months from DNC convention for Dems to do their homework. Just my 2 cents. Thank you. That's a good point. I mean, you'll have, like you said, about right now it's about 2.5 months, or excuse me, 3.5 months. That's not a lot of time to vet a candidate. I still believe, just because of the finances, that if it does happen the way the media is reporting, that Biden will step down, I just believe it's got to be Harris. But they're looking at the poll numbers of Harris, and they're not that much better than Biden. So they're in a very precarious situation. And we'll talk a little bit more about it in depth a little bit later on. But thank you for your 2 cents. I appreciate it. Fox News says the 5 biggest moments of the Trump speech. Let me know what you think. Trump pays tribute to the fallen firefighter. Yes, that was a very moving, touching tribute with the moments of silence. Trump retells the assassination attempt. Many people pointing to that as a powerful part of his speech. In order to see the chart, I started to turn to my right and was ready to begin a further turn, which I'm lucky I didn't, when I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really hard on my right ear. I said to myself, wow, what was that? It could only be a bullet, and moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down, and my hand was covered with blood. Just blood all over the place. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack, and in one movement proceeded to drop to the ground. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at the very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be with you tonight. He also praised the fact that the crowd did not run for the exits or stampede. I do think it was important. Well, it's what we talked about on the program yesterday or the last couple of days, where yesterday specifically, because Joy Reid said it was a photo op, that photo of him pumping his fist, but he reiterated exactly what we knew. I mean, he's watched enough sports in his life. If someone gets seriously hurt in a sporting event, what do? When they stand up, they kind of wave to the crowd, or even if they're on the stretcher, they put their hand up so the crowd can know that they're okay. He wanted to tell his crowd, his followers, his supporters, that he was okay. They didn't know what was going on. That huge crowd in Butler, Pennsylvania didn't know what was going on. They didn't know where he'd been hit. He just wanted to take a moment to reassure them he was okay and everything was going to be okay. Next up, Trump pays tribute to Melania. That was very nice. Trump shows illegal immigration chart that he believes saved his life. That's a weird way of wording that, but okay. And finally, Trump uses Biden's name. Trump went off script and used Biden's name once and quickly said he wouldn't do it again. If you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of the United States, think of it, the 10 worst, and add them all up, they will not have done the damage that Biden has done. I'm only going to use the term once, Biden. I'm not going to use the name anymore, just one time. 92 minutes, folks. 92-minute speech. Now, as I mentioned, Franklin Graham, I thought, gave a very nice speech as well. He led the Republican National Convention in prayer. Is it just me, or the more I see him, the more he looks like his father in the picture, or in the video from last night? But anyway, he said, last Saturday in Butler, Pennsylvania, President Trump had a near-death experience, no question, but God spared his life. And when we go through those experiences, it changes us. It can cause us to examine our lives and to reevaluate our priorities, as you should. When President Trump rose from that platform, he rose with his fist raised in strength, showing America his unshakable resolve to fight with them in the nation. I cannot explain why God would save one life and allow another one to be taken. I don't have an answer for that. But one thing I do know is that God loves us, and he wants us to be with him in heaven one day, and that's through faith in his son, Jesus Christ. So Franklin Graham giving a very moving prayer and speech. Oh, good. We got some comments coming in. I'll read them in just a moment. But leading into Trump's record-breaking 92-minute speech at the RNC. 1 hour, 31 minutes, and 55 seconds. The speech was the longest by a presidential nominee in history, according to Politico. Now, if you want to know whose record he previously set, they were set by himself in 2016 and 2020. But Donald Trump delivering that heartfelt call for unity yesterday and recounted the assassination attempt. Those are the two big takeaways. But I want to hear, most importantly, your takeaways from last night. Were you able, listen, this isn't any kind of criticism. Were you able to stay up that late? I mean, these events last long. I know on the West Coast it helps. They get to see it. But boy, it gets late. So we're not going to go in. Like I said, I don't want to, like I said yesterday on the program, I don't want to get into where I end up just quoting him the whole time. I have a few opinion pieces on this, see what some talking heads had to say as well. And then we're going to dive into all the anonymous sources. They're telling us a million different things about Biden's future. But I do believe we are at the point, at least I am, where I'm checking my news feed and social media constantly to see what announcement could be made. It seems like the end is nigh for President Biden's campaign, only because the metrics that I originally was going to weigh on was that if Obama and Pelosi and Schumer called for his ouster, and that, though they have not went on record saying it, that is what's being reported. So I would tend to lean towards him stepping out, and soon, because each day is more difficult for the Democrats. Each day he does not step away, though, to that viewer's point, it gives them, the media, not that they'll vet really, but it gives the Trump campaign less time to vet the candidate that's out there. But that's assuming that's not Harris. There is a piece of CNN of how it could be done, who could replace him. There's also pieces that if the party that lectures everyone about democracy and says that a vote for the Democrats is a vote for democracy, then why would they not allow their voters to have a say in the process? And they're suggesting an open convention. We'll get to that as well. But we got to take another short break. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. I've had so many comments coming in, and I thank you that there's been some major tech issues. It's being reported by the not on this program running fine, but elsewhere, major U.S. carriers had the ground flights. It stranded travelers for hours. They're blaming it on a Microsoft cloud outage. Some people, this is one report I received early this morning. A massive IT outage disrupts businesses, banks, airlines, media outlets, and emergency services across the world. The problem appeared to be caused by a CrowdStrike update that affected Microsoft Windows devices. That's coming from the Wall Street Journal. Microsoft 365 said it was working on a fix and was observing a positive trend in service availability, but chaos still reigns. So thank you to people bringing that to my attention. I do appreciate that. Yeah, some people throughout the morning have wondered, and we always wonder when something like that happens. Is it some type of cyber attack? Is it something bigger, more nefarious? But what is being reported by the Wall Street Journal, it was essentially a technical glitch. So if we find out anything else on that, we'll continue to bring the information to you. Here is a comment, and I hope the viewer doesn't mind. I'm going to do it from counting down the top 5 that this viewer believes from the convention overall. So we're going to start at number 5. Number 5, Tucker Carlson. This viewer liked Tucker Carlson's speech. What was interesting about Tucker last night is you get used to so many people on the teleprompters doing that thing, that it was interesting to have someone give a speech essentially off the top of their head. Number 4, Eric Trump. Yeah, Eric Trump's doing, he was always kind of the more quiet brother, wasn't he? He always seemed it to me. He was always Don Jr. in the forefront. But Eric Trump seems to be more active, and he's doing a good job. 3, Vance's wife. I thought she's such a strong addition to this campaign. I thought she did a wonderful job. I can't wait to see more speeches like that. I think due to time restraints, she gave a great speech. I wish we could have had more. I think we could have learned more about Vance, J.D. Vance, from her. And I agree with you. I think she was a very important part of that convention. 2, Vance. Vance showing the world who J.D. Vance was, his introduction to many. That was a very, very good speech. J.D. Vance did a wonderful job. And number 1, from this viewer's opinion, the everyday regular people with grassroots stories about Trump and the attempted assassination. Yeah, I love the grassroots people as well, the everyday people that have these amazing stories to tell. They're so fascinating and very often heartbreaking. Like we look at the night where it's focused on crime and illegal immigration and drug overdoses. I would agree with you. I do really enjoy that. So thank you. Keep those comments coming in. What were the highlights for your convention experience, I should say? What were there any takeaways? And maybe there's things you didn't like. Any comment about the convention is yours to have, and I will try to read it. But also, what do you think Biden's chances are lasting on the weekend, by the weekend in his campaign? When I get on the air on Monday, will we be talking about the Biden campaign, or will we not be? Of course, if he drops out, we'll still be talking about it, but you know what I mean. We'll be talking about his election or not. Now, Trump did preach. I think that word is overused. It has preachy kind of connotation. But Trump preaches unity as he accepts the GOP presidential nomination days after surviving assassination attempt. So we can go into all of the details on that if you would like, but I think at the risk of quoting too much, we're going to move on a little bit from the actual speech itself, but I would love to hear your comments. Oh, here's a prediction from a viewer. I'm predicting Andrew Graham Beshear, governor of Kentucky, will be Harris's VP. So you're assuming Biden's out, and that's your prediction. All right, mark the time, 6:29 a.m. Friday morning, the 19th. That is when that viewer believes Andrew Graham Beshear. Am I saying that right? Beshear? I better get knowing it. Thank you for that. Anything is fair game. I'd love to hear predictions of who the VP will be for Harris. Now, I'm glad that Trump brought up the international crisis that we're in. The media seems to not want to focus on that. But there is an international crisis the likes of which the world has seldom been a part of, said Trump. War is now raging in Europe and in the Middle East. A growing specter of conflict hangs over Taiwan, Korea, the Philippines, and all of Asia. And our planet is teetering on the edge of World War III. And this will be a war like no other. And this is what I mentioned earlier. I just want to bring it to you so that you're prepared if people bring this up, especially on social media. Outrage over a misspelling on hero ex-firefighter chief Corey Comperatore jacket that Donald Trump brought on stage is misplaced. That outrage is misplaced. The firehouse itself misspelled it. The 11-letter surname of Comperatore is missing the A on the back of the firefighting gear. And so those on media, I guess, suggesting that it was there's some type of Trump didn't respect the guy, which is just outrageous. His last name couldn't fit on the coat, so he had the A removed to make it fit. Aaron Newborn tweeted in response to one of the many critics accusing the president of making a tasteless mistake. The 50-year-old hero's devastated widow, as Trump described her in the speech, told the Post this week she refused to take Biden's call after the murder. I didn't talk to Biden. I didn't want to talk to him. My husband was a devout Republican, and he would not have wanted me to talk to him. So there we go. That's just something, if you see that come across your news feed or someone goes directly to you to talk about it. Another thing about I think it was very important, and maybe you may have missed this. Former President Trump gave an update on condition of the victims of the would-be assassin's bullets over the weekend, while saying he has raised more than $6 million for them in the last several days. Firefighter, father, and husband Corey Comperatore was killed during the rally. Trump held a moment of silence during his speech Thursday night. When speaking to the family, I told them, said Trump, I said, well, I'm going to be sending you a lot of money. But it can't compensate. They all said the same thing. You're right, sir. We appreciate so much what you're doing, but nothing can take the place in the case of Corey and the other two, by the way, the the ones that are very seriously injured. Okay. We're going to take a look at what some of those in the media are saying this morning. I know we're all, I think, a little tired this morning, but we're getting some great comments in, some great waves in. It was a 92-minute speech to be remembered. And we're going to also, of course, take a deep dive into the talks about Biden's campaign. And I do love the speculation. Who do you think, okay, if Biden steps aside, who do you think will, number one, take his place? Will it be Harris? If not Harris, who? And if it is Harris, who do you think will be as VP? Interesting. Interesting to play those games. Also, I do have a couple New York issues hopefully we can get to. There's an exclusive report at the New York Post. I'll at least pose this to you, or at least mention it quickly, that former Governor Andrew Cuomo paid quite a bit of money to a polling company. I guess wondering what his chances are if he decides to run either again for governor or for mayor. So something to think about there. Something in the back of your mind. Maybe he'll start to go for the presidential nod. Remember, he thought, even when he used to poll at 1%, he wanted to stay in the race. He's got an ego on him. But I know when COVID hit and he was giving those press conferences, there were talks at the time of having Biden drop out and Cuomo taking the lead. Remember that? Anyway, let's take a break before I run too late and I get on all these tangents. Stay with us. Our beautiful view of historic Market Street on your Friday morning, 6:39. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox broadcasting live from the Hesselson studios. Some comments from viewers. I also enjoyed the music. The band Six Wire is from Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, I thought they did a really good job. They're nice filler music. Let me ask you this just as a side note. How frustrating is it? And I don't know what outlet you watch. I flip around and I then found a stream that was almost like a C-SPAN stream that was just the convention. How annoying is it when there's a good speech going on and they cut away to some talking head telling you what you want to watch? I get there's so much downtime, not so much. There is downtime during these conventions to have people speak, and I can understand a talking head pundit can sometimes go over a little bit and you miss the intro or something. I understand that, but boy, sometimes it's why show me the split screen of someone giving a speech and not let me watch that speech? I'm just confused by that. But another comment from a viewer, different viewer. If it isn't Harris, don't they have to start the campaign contributions from zero all over again? Doesn't the funds raised by their campaign have to stay with the candidates that it is associated with? Yes, that's one reason why so many people are speculating it'll be Harris. They know they don't. Well, there's two things. They don't want it to be Harris because the polling doesn't look great for Harris either, though many people have said that her VP would be a huge pick, that it could actually help her quite a bit. But put that aside. They don't necessarily want her, but yes, if someone donated to the Biden-Harris campaign, only Biden or Harris can have that money, is what has been reported, of what is being regarded as the rules. The other thing, the party itself cannot be shown saying that Harris isn't capable of that job. She's been VP for 4 years, and you're going to replace her with a Newsom or a Whitmer. Boy, the optics on that would look horrible. Continuing along with the RNC, we are going to get to the Biden campaign here in just a moment. The New York Post editorial board says, well, there's something you thought you'd never see at a Republican National Convention. Kid Rock rapping and telling the people in suits and ties to get up on their feet. Wrestler Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt. The head of UFC fighting, or I guess that's redundant, Ultimate Fighting, delivering the introduction of the nominee who came out to giant flashing lights and a backdrop that looked like the White House. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Donald Trump, who delivered a speech packed with appeals to unity and healing. Knock us over with a feather. I'm running to be president for all of America, not half of America, Trump said, and thank goodness for it. Even those who back Trump have offered advice that too often seem to fall on deaf ears. Don't tweet so much. Don't be so angry. Reach across the aisle. In his speech, he did it all. For his third nomination for president, a rarity in American history, Trump was calm, charming, and at one point said he was asking with great humility. We're not kidding, he said humility. It was a perfect choice of tone and message. Trump's welcoming delivery, his appeals to lift the nation higher, only highlighted the increasingly deranged rhetoric of the left. And as I mentioned, MSNBC turning into a conspiratorial channel, essentially. We're going to get to that in a moment. He also gave a touching tribute to Corey Compatore, the firefighter who died by an assassin's bullet. It was an honor that followed the speeches of previous days by the victims of crime and Gold Star families who have been completely ignored by President Biden. Of course, Trump is still Trump. He went off script many times, particularly towards the end, and the speech went on for a long time. But the overall idea was correct. There were voters who took a chance on Trump in 2016, but he lost in 2020 because he alienated too many of them. This address proves he realizes that and has made strides to win them back. Van Jones, doing RNC coverage for CNN, former Obama advisor, if you're not familiar with Van Jones, he said, I want to say something. This spirit that this guy has, you guys think it's because he's drunk, meaning Hulk Hogan. He's not. The whole thing is like this. Hey guys, the last time I was in a convention that felt like this was Obama 2008. There's something happening here. Now, Casey Hunt interrupted Jones, because you can't say something positive about the convention, said that Jones wrote a headline with his remarks. Yeah, so in reference to Hulk Hogan, saying, I want to say something, the spirit that this guy has, meaning Hulk Hogan, you guys think it's because he's drunk. He's not. The whole thing is like this. The last time I was in a convention that felt like this was Obama 2008. Very interesting. NBC's, to show you again that the media just does not get it. NBC News political national correspondent Jacob Soboroff said the RNC is acting as if it was a party, even though Trump talked about mass deportations. Well, maybe this is his first convention. They are a party. I have to tell you, it's almost unspeakable feeling to be in a room with such a celebratory nature and hear the man behind me talk about deporting more people than President Dwight D. Eisenhower. This is what's happened at MSNBC. Not that they weren't always bad. An operation with a name so racist it's not appropriate to say on television. He's talking about removing more than 10 million people from this country who have been here. Many of them since they were little children, contribute to this society, contribute to this economy, live in all of our neighborhoods and communities. And now we're throwing balloons around as if this is a party? You can put the unity bumper sticker all over it. What we heard tonight was not a message of bringing people together. It was a message of literally kicking millions of people out of the country. Let's take another short break. That's from MSNBC, just to give you an idea that they just don't understand. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Frank speaking. Here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Doug Schoen at Fox News says Donald Trump may well have sealed the outcome of the 2024 election with a performance on Thursday night in Milwaukee that has largely been unmatched in recent American political history. The former president eschewed the polarization and division that has marked much of his rhetoric in the past. In his speech officially accepting the Republican Party's nomination, there were only a couple of references to the 2020 election. Trump was able to hit on key messages when speaking about topics like inflation, especially immigration, in ways that were compelling and arguably responsive to the fundamental concerns of Americans. I say this not to engage in hyperbole, as I have never been and am not now a Trump supporter. But as a political analyst, you have to acknowledge reality. And the reality of this speech was simple. Trump spoke of the American dream. He spoke of bringing people together. He spoke of helping African Americans, Hispanics, and those who have been left behind. In short, Trump did something he has virtually never done before. Speak to all the American people. As he said, he wanted to speak not to 50%, but to 100% of the American people. And that's what many people are referencing, the kind of new tone after the assassination attempt. What were your thoughts? Again, posing the question, what were your top moments from the convention? What did you think of Trump's speech last night? Michael Goodwin says that Trump's promise to usher in a new era of safety, prosperity, and freedom for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed would seem fanciful in almost any other moment in American history. So too, his vow to bring back the American dream and heal the discord and division in our society because we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. After all, we hear similar statements looking to our better angels on schedule every 4 years, like presidential inaugural addresses, acceptance speeches of new nominees routinely soar with grandeur and are just as quickly forgotten as the complex business of governing inevitably turns messy. Again, this is Michael Goodwin. And yet, because we are living in extraordinary times and have just witnessed one of the most consequential weeks in political history, we must view Trump's remarks through a new lens. A man who came within 1/4 of an inch of having his head blown off by an assassin is giving every indication that survival has given him a new lease on life. As he told me in the interview the day after the shooting, "I'm not supposed to be here, I'm supposed to be dead." That's a profound feeling, and is possible only to those who have faced sudden death and see their lives as a gift. Trump said something similar last night, then added a new finish. "I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God." He said Sunday that he had already prepared an extremely tough speech, really good, all about the corrupt, horrible administration of Joe Biden, then suddenly added, "But I threw it away." Yeah, he called it a humdinger at one point. I like that term. I admit I've used it, but you don't hear it that often. The result was last night's address. Though he rambled at times and trotted out his claims that the 2020 election was stolen, the former president largely kept to his script and his promise to try to unite our country. The changes in tone and content were numerous, and the inclusion of such lines as "I am running to be the president of all of America, not half of America, because there's no victory in winning for half of America," were warmly received. And this one captured the spirit of the convention, which featured a wide array of Americans united by a dreadful sense that their country is sliding downhill. "To every citizen," Trump said, "whether you are young or old, man or woman, Democrat, Republican, or independent, black or white, Asian or Hispanic, I extend to you a hand of loyalty and friendship." Other sections were not so encouraging, as when he referred to crazy Nancy Pelosi. It's a sort of insult that repels people who want to fix the country, but see Trump's name calling as juvenile and leads them to ignore anything he says after. As such, his speech was a curious end to one of the most enthusiastic party conventions I have ever seen. The contrast with Democrats and President Biden couldn't be starker. Growing ranks of Democrats are trying to force him to quit the race, and are threatening to use their convention next month to find a replacement. Some reports say the end could be as soon as Sunday, assuming Biden finally comes to accept the fact the country no longer has confidence in his leadership. Republicans, on the other hand, are growing ever more certain of victory in November. The convention was a continuing celebration. The happy days would soon be here again. Even before the assassination attempt, Trump was on a roll, with poll after poll showing him building a commanding lead nationally, and especially in the battleground states. The major shift began with Biden's debate debacle and has continued. And remember, they want him out because he can't win, not because of his health reasons. Think of that. There was an awakening on all its own. For more than 3 years, they had defended evidence of obvious decline, and they called it a right-wing conspiracy. Suddenly, they admitted he couldn't win and wasn't capable of serving a second term. Many of the left-wing media suddenly turned against him, too, after years of covering up his mumbles and stumbles, calling you a conspiratorial nut if you believed the videos you were seeing. Then came the assassination attempt and Trump's defiant reaction. When a man who dodges death stands up, blood smeared on his face, and makes a fist and says, "Fight," politics has entered a new dimension. The iconic moment revealed that Trump really does have the heart of a lion and supercharged the campaign. More recent polls show his lead growing, with one released before his speech showing he is ahead in all 7 battleground states. Still, the race is far from over. And yes, I know I mentioned it yesterday at the end of the program. Republicans, if they get complicit and think that it's all over but the shouting, they're making a huge mistake and falling right into the Democrats' trap. The point is that a Biden replacement could make the contest competitive again and at least give Democrats a chance to win one or both houses of Congress, if not the presidency. That was the state of play as Trump took the stage yesterday. My guess is that he knows he didn't seal the deal with wavering voters because he couldn't quite bring himself to express his new hope for national unity. To be sure, there will be plenty of other opportunities for Trump to adopt a new tone and offer new ideas, and it may be that Democrats will continue to bloody themselves by failing to unite behind a Biden replacement. Indeed, Biden himself might take heart from Trump's uneven performance and decide to keep fighting to stay on the ticket, which could be a drawn-out battle that could sap Democrat dollars and surely help the GOP. In any case, Trump still has time to express his newfound vision for a united nation, free of rampant hatred, and practice what he planned to preach. He got started Thursday, and here's hoping he remains determined to strike a new tone for America that desperately needs a strong but generous leadership. I would tend to agree with points that Michael Good would make, but I would also question some of his statements. I believe that was a very different and new type Trump last night. And I do think it spoke with many people. But we're going to talk about the Biden campaign and what is happening there. Yes, we are to the point where we're checking the news constantly to see if there are any announcements, with speculation and anonymous sources saying that the campaign could be over as soon as Sunday. We'll talk about that. A few other comments about the convention. Let me know what you thought. And we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Last break of this hour, then we're going to wrap up hour number 1. So please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Wrapping up hour number 1. In the next hour, we're going to be talking with Angela Daniels from the Salvation Army of Corning. Find out about some upcoming fundraisers. You won't want to miss that. Grab your calendar so you can write down some of the dates. Next week on the program, we're going to play some catch-up. Well, first, Monday, brand new interview. Really looking forward to it with Jo Barlow. She's going to be joining us to talk about the Crystal Chords and their upcoming Summer Sing events. And, of course, they gave us a new song, which we always look forward to. So that'll be Monday. But if you recall earlier in the week, I had mentioned I had some kind of past country stars and country musicians that I had interviews with, but it didn't seem appropriate, especially after the assassination attempt, to just randomly, not fair for them either to play that interview because they were all pre-recorded. So we'll probably get to those next week, and I have some other guests in the works, so you want to tune in all weekend long. All week long, excuse me. Well, you can tune in weekend long on YouTube if you want. Here is a comment from a viewer. This is the first time I've ever watched any kind of acceptance speech for the nomination of Democrat or Republican convention. And I would have enjoyed it if I could have listened to all of it. Instead of going back to the newscasters and all they wanted to talk about was Harris, all they wanted to talk about was Biden. And I could not switch to another station because I don't get cable. So if you're poor and you can't afford cable, you watch what they tell you to watch and think what they want you to think, because there is no station even middle of the road. It's all hateful Democrats. They can't even shut up long enough for anyone to form a different opinion than what they want you to form. I'm not a Rhodes Scholar. I'm not even a college graduate, but I know common sense, what's going on. I would have liked it if they would have just let me watch the Republican convention without them telling me what to think, meaning the media. That was so frustrating, especially to that other viewer's point. Some of the best speeches were the grassroots people, the common everyday man and woman telling their tale, and those were the ones they were interrupting the most. But yes, watching the split screen, I know I'm running late, watching the split screen where there's a speech you want to see going on, and yet you have people talking about what they're saying or what someone previously said. Let us make up our mind. That's a kind of a look at media 101. Never mind, you don't have to pay attention to that. Believe what I have to say. Adhere to what I have to say. And that's what it feels like. I understand your frustration, viewer, and I'm sorry that you weren't able to watch the full convention. I'm surprised C-SPAN isn't on antenna. Maybe that would have been an outlet. But anyway, we've got to take our the break to wrap up the hour. We're running really late. So hour number 2 coming up next. Stay with us. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I am your host, Frank Acom. Thank you for joining us this morning. A few comments from viewers. Hopefully you were tuned in the whole time, so you understand what we're talking about here. To the viewer at the bottom of the last hour, who rightfully so was complaining about the talking heads that will not let you watch the speeches and tell you what to think. Well, another viewer commented on that comment saying, spot on, viewer. I think there's going to be a lot of people that agree with you. Next, a different comment from a different viewer. My long view is that ousting Biden and installing Harris is a lateral move for the Democratic Party. The new VP pick will be key for the Democratic Party to hold on. It would need to be a unifying personality that is more conservative. They really should be considering RFK Jr., but they will wind up picking a Joe Biden clone that the party can control. Thank you very much. If Harris does take Biden's place in the campaign, yes, that will be a very important vice presidential pick. The Biden campaign says that Trump's speech last night failed. Okay. One DNC member called Trump's speech awful. One of the worst speeches Trump has ever given. Rambling, incoherent, super low energy, weird, bizarre asides. I'm actually really surprised it's that bad. And of course, the requisite lies, and absolutely no new tone. And I already had that in the book. Oh, as I mentioned, MSNBC, and we're going to talk about the Biden campaign next. Unless you want to talk about the convention, if you have comments, what did you think about Trump's speech last night? I'd love to hear what you think was the biggest takeaways or the biggest takeaway from the whole convention. I find that really interesting. But MSNBC Joy Reid, we talked about her yesterday, calling the historic photo, the iconic photo of Trump after the assassination attempt, just a photo op. She's been pushing conspiracy theories. The Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom says that she keeps pumping more conspiracy theories to her viewers. Joy Reid suggests Trump might not have been hit by a bullet at all. Hints that the entire attack may have been staged. She, as we mentioned yesterday, said that is it really any different, Biden having COVID, than Trump almost being assassinated? Then, of course, the conspiracy theory of why did he have those 9 seconds where he got to have the photo ops? We'll get to the bottom of that. Well, she has a history of conspiracy theories, so this should come as nothing new. One person on Twitter said, Alex Jones was fined $1.5 billion for his comments on Sandy Hook. How is this any different? Fine Joy Reid and seize MSNBC's studio equipment. And this is coming from the Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom. I don't want to go through all the comments. But Mediaite says the past week or so has not been great for MSNBC nor its reputation. The left-leaning cable news network has struggled with how to cover the current news cycle for an audience eager to hear only good news about President Biden or dire warnings about Trump. That formula has led to relatively strong ratings over the past few years. The horrific assassination attempt on Trump, as well as the dire state of the Biden campaign, has disrupted the balance of coverage that kept the liberal media world in the shallow end of the pool. This week, MSNBC struggled to cover it at all, and many smart and typically reliable sources on the network leaned in to conspiracy theories. The lurid spectacle echoed a phenomenon all too familiar to those who followed the rise of QAnon during the Trump administration. The QAnon theory, which holds among other ideas that the Democrat Party is a cabal of cannibal pedophiles and things like that. I'm not suggesting anyone on MSNBC is even close. This is an opinion piece. I should have said that. To that level. But there are parallels between the kind of commentary we've seen on the network this week and the basis for the kind of thinking that leads someone to embrace a theory like QAnon. Namely, the tendency to see connections or patterns between unrelated or random things. And who is it exactly? Colby Hall goes through what they're saying. Reed Berkowitz compared QAnon enthusiasts to game players who find perfect clues that actually have nothing to do with reality. Take this back to MSNBC, which has featured a series of twisted takes on Republican politics this week. Perhaps the most glaring example is Michael Steele, who raised a series of questions about Trump's injury, all of which have answers, positing the already disproven theory that a shard of glass is what grazed his ear. Steele pointed to a lack of medical information from Team Trump as evidence something fishy was going on, echoing conspiracy theorists who seize upon one fact as a sign something nefarious is going on. Under this guise of just asking questions, Joy Reid took to threads to ask her own questions about the shooting, with the implicit suggestion that things are not as they seem. Reid, it should be noted, has spent the week pushing other wild claims to try and give her audience something to grasp onto, including the absurd claim that Biden surviving COVID was the same as Trump getting shot. There are more examples of Reid's odd commentary from the last few days and weeks, like her blaming the media for making Trump out to be a victim after he was a victim of an assassination attempt. But there are too many to list. Before you think I have it for her, I argued for her getting a weekday show. Even the reliable and sharp Rachel Maddow, remember this is coming from the left, got in the act when she connected Vance's love of Lord of the Rings to the far right, saying it's Aryan, but you move the end to the front. Like his mentor, Peter Thiel, who had given him all his jobs, Mr. Vance Also, when he founded his own venture capital firm with help from Peter Thiel, named it after a Lord of the Rings character. He called it Narya, which you can remember because it's Aryan, but you move the end to the front. Wow. Joking? We don't know. But what are they doing here? So I thought that was just, I know I didn't want to get too far into that this morning. I'm sorry. But it's one of the reasons why they took Joe Scarborough off in the morning on Monday. They were afraid of what would be said, what kind of rhetoric would be used. MSNBC, this is again coming from the left. MSNBC is not only doing the nation a grave disservice by finding conspiratorial clues where none exist, they're also unwittingly helping Trump get reelected. Now let's get to the Biden campaign. There's so much back and forth, so many anonymous sources. It just depends on what outlet you go to. The New York Times is reporting from an anonymous source that that Biden could be out before the end of the weekend, that he will suspend his campaign. Now, I had said one of the metrics that I was using is if Obama came out and suggested that Biden suspend his campaign. Now, he has not come out in the sense of a press conference or something, but the fact that there is an article that was released saying that he did just that was most likely approved by the former president, and therefore he essentially did come out and tell Biden to the world that he doesn't believe that he should be running. So, do you think when we start Monday's show that Biden will still be the presidential candidate? Oh, one other thing about Biden before we get into the questions about his health. And keep in mind, I know I sound like a broken record on this, but the issue wasn't about Biden's health. We know about Biden's health for 3.5 years now. Even though they kept telling us we were liars, never mind what we're seeing, you're conspiratorial, he's fine, he's healthy, sharpest he's ever been. We knew, the American people knew what we were seeing with our own eyes. But the issue was never about the health and what that means at the international front, what that means domestically, what that means about our country's health and safety. That's not the issue. That's not why they're calling for him to resign, because you're just not healthy enough to do the job. And you're just not healthy enough to run for 4 more years or be the president for 4 more years. That's not it at all. It's because they changed their tune because they realized he was not electable any longer. So it's all at the end of the day about politics. It's not about the health of the nation. It's about he might cost us the election. Oh, and he also might cost us the House and the Senate. That's when you saw the turn. But did you see a federal appeals court, before we go to break, did block Biden's $475 billion student loan bailout? How many times has this happened where this loan bailout has been blocked and they just ignore it? The St. Louis-based 8th Circuit Court of Appeals granted a request by 7 Republican-led states to put a hold on parts of the $475 billion student debt cancellation plan. Just a quick update on that. As we've talked about in the past, the administration trying to buy some votes. We've got a few other things about his campaign and what is being said. So make your predictions. Let me know what you thought of the RNC. What do you think the weekend holds? Or anything else you'd like to talk about? As I mentioned, Angela Daniels coming up in a little bit to talk about the Salvation Army. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street Corning. Let's go through some viewer comments. First comment, Biden is done. Now they've got to figure out who their next Manchurian candidate is going to be. Doesn't really matter as they don't have a chance in heck after everything they've done to us. Trump 2024 landslide. Thank you very much. Another comment. This is in reference to the court, the Federal Appeals Court, blocking Biden's $475 billion student loan bailout. You borrow, you pay. Simple. Well, now, keep in mind, if you borrow, especially school loans, and it's election time, you may have a chance at having that loan forgiven. Okay, did you see what this is? You probably, I'm guessing, know the term clickbait by now, but just some salacious headline or something to get your attention. You click on it because you want to see what it says. It's cheap. Well, did you see that the Biden campaign did that? Ricky Schlott, we quote her quite a bit here on the program. She's with the New York Post. She said, President Biden has COVID-19. And somehow his team managed to transform his diagnosis into the cheapest campaign clickbait. This is what his tweet, if you will, said. Biden's campaign tweet said, "I'm sick." The cryptic tweet, of course, caused many to click on and be curious about the chaos and speculation of what this could be. The news broke. Now, of course, there's ongoing when you, not just about COVID, but when you see him saying "I'm sick," there are issues with his cognitive health and his cognitive function. So there's a lot of reasons that you may be tempted to click on that. While almost 150 million people saw that tweet, just 19 million saw the follow-up tweet within the thread, which led on the whole thing was a tacky attempt to solicit donations. So once you saw the first one, "I'm sick," if you dug down a little bit, of Elon Musk and his rich buddies trying to buy this election. And if you agree, pitch in. Now, in a moment of tense unrest, our nation deserves signals of strength and unity from the president. Instead, Biden's team made things even more chaotic with a cryptic tweet that unleashed panic and speculation online. We are living in an era of historical whiplash between an attempted assassination of former President Trump, alarm over President Biden's mental acuity, and nail-biting anticipation as pressure mounts for the 81-year-old incumbent to drop out. Mere minutes before the Biden's campaign's tasteless tweet, Democrat Representative Ro Khanna of California laudably called for a moment of unity on Twitter. Fellow House Democrats, can we, in this moment, unify, show some decency, and simply wish Biden a speedy and full recovery? He's right. This could have been a moment of those on both sides of the aisle to take the high road and wish the president well, regardless of political differences. All that tweet did was project callousness and weakness to the American people and the rest of the world. Unfortunately, the White House says the president is doing well, or fortunately, did I say that? The White House says the president is doing well and only has mild symptoms. But the stunt drew criticism from frustrated Biden supporters. I doubt Joe Biden approved that tweet. Not helpful at all. They need to read the room. So anyway, just showing how tone deaf that they can be. This is at times when people are calling for him to step away from the campaign because of his mental health. Obama, it was reported yesterday, and this is a big one. It's being reported that he is pressuring the president to drop out of the 2024 bid. Obama and Biden have only spoken once since the presidential debate, but stressed during the conversation that his old running mate's chance of beating Trump was greatly diminished. The 44 president also stressed that while Biden's legacy was important to him, only his former vice president could make the call on whether to stay in the race. Our campaign is not working through any scenario where President Biden is not at the top of the ticket. He is and will be the Democratic nominee, said Quentin Fulks, the manager for the Biden-Harris campaign, or the deputy campaign manager. So do you think he will outlast this criticism? I thought for a moment he was going to. Right after the debate, there was a lot of calls for him to step aside, but he lasted. Then it kind of died down a little bit, kind of quieted him. And I thought, well, I guess maybe he's going to weather the storm. But I think the assassination attempt on former President Trump, that iconic historic photo, I think Democrats, again, not worrying about what's happening with the country because of his health, just worried that he can't win re-election. So they began, again, the process of calling him to step aside. We got comments coming in. We're going to read those in just a moment. Now the Biden campaign is changing its tune a little bit, and that's why I think we're starting to see some red flags that would make me believe that the campaign of Biden-Harris may be through. Biden campaign co-chair says president still seeking input despite claims he's committed to the campaign. Chris Coons, a longtime Biden ally, said, in my conversations with the president, he's been asking for input. He's been asking from all of us who talk to him regularly for advice, for counsel, for input on the polls, on the opinion of our colleagues. But he has communicated to every Democrat in writing that he intends to continue this campaign. And that's that letter that we talked about last week. We mentioned it with former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. We had a nice conversation about that. Biden said at the time, clearly and unequivocally, I wouldn't be running again if I did not absolutely believe I was the best person to beat Donald Trump in 2024. So we're going to talk more about this when we come back. But actually, when we come back, we're going to talk. We'll read a comment from a viewer. Then we're going to talk with Angela Daniels from the Salvation Army of Corning. That's coming up next. Right? Why am I second guessing myself? Yeah, no, I'm right. Okay. Comment from a viewer first. It was a long night, folks. The convention lasted long. You know that. All right. Can you imagine? This is from Ken. Can you imagine how great it would be if our politicians and media always told us the truth? I am sure, unless Gort from the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still comes to Earth to force them to tell the truth, they never will. The media, and to that other viewer's point, I'm telling you, the commentary during the debates, because I flipped all over. I was on as many channels as I could find not the debate, the convention yesterday. To have these people just talking over every speech as if they have something important to say. And you hear what they have to say, and it's just recapping what the previous guest that they interrupted said, or the previous speaker that they interrupted said. It's so maddening. And yes, very often the whole time not telling the truth, to Ken's point. Like we mentioned with MSNBC, like we talked about with Joy Reid becoming so conspiratorial. Their hatred for Trump has become so much that they're willing to push any conspiracy, any kind of lie. Because the New York Times, just like the New York Times said, we will do anything to stop Trump. We've got another comment here. I'm hoping Harris does debate Vance, as I predict she will lose and act like the phony Marxist she is, and Vance will eat her alive. I hope the only people, let me reword that. Harris congratulated J.D. Vance and said, I look forward to seeing you at the debate. The Trump campaign has not confirmed any debate or agreed to any vice presidential debate because, and it was more of a dig at Biden, saying, we don't know who's going to be on the top of the ticket and who's going to be the VP yet. So it'd be kind of presumptuous of us to do that. We'll wait until after the nominating process, kind of taking a dig there at Biden. So I would love to see that debate as well. And when I asked the question, what did you think of the Republican National Convention? I've seen comments from viewers and others I talked to saying that Vance was the highlight for them, learning more about him, excited about him being on the ticket. What was your takeaways from the convention? Do you think Biden will last the weekend? Those are just some of the questions we've been asking this morning. And because we heard former Governor Cuomo spend a lot of money on pollsters trying to gauge the reaction to him entering politics again, what do you think Cuomo's going to run for? There you go. All those questions and much more. But when we come back, Angela Daniels from the Salvation Army of Corning. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. This is the Hesselson studio that we're broadcasting from, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of the program. Angela's back on the show. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, and this is very important because we talk about the Salvation Army a lot on this program. Tell us about why these fundraisers that we're about to talk about are so important now for the Salvation Army of Corning.
Well, last year during our kettle fundraising at the end of the year, we didn't raise quite as much as we would have liked to, and as much as we have traditionally. Mm-hmm. And frankly, we are still doing just as much work in our local community as we have always done. So we've got to make up that shortfall somewhere. Just to give you an idea, just this month, we served 274 adults in various ways. We do rental assistance, we do food assistance, we do clothing assistance. We do a lot of really important basic human services kind of stuff. We served 146 children this month. We run a summer program for low-income families, and those kids get access to all kinds of stuff that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. Mm-hmm. We served a total of 192 families, individual families this month. 363 meals provided just this last month. So this is really important work, and we've got to make up our funding shortfall, and we're trying to restructure our fundraising a little bit so that we're a little bit better set up for next year and going forward, because the work that we do isn't being done by anybody else. We are filling a hole in this community, and we want to make sure that it gets taken care of.
And I think that's one of the things that's actually been a detriment to the Salvation Army, because they do so much amazing work, but they stay quiet doing it.
Yeah.
Which is not typical. And I think now we're going to have to be, and in full disclosure, I'm obviously on the board. I've talked about it in the past. we need to start getting active in the community. We are active in helping the community, but just so people are aware of how much we do so that they can help.
I think that you're right about that. I think that a lot of people don't know, if it's not something that affects you personally, you maybe don't know that there is a lot of food insecurity in our town. There's a lot of housing insecurity in our town. Steuben County is one of the poorest counties in the state of New York.
Right.
So there's a lot of privilege in Corning, but there's also a lot of need, and the Salvation Army really steps up and fills in some of the places where people are falling through the cracks.
And I'm glad you mentioned that about Steuben County, because we are considered the Salvation Army of Corning, but we take care of Steuben County.
Right.
Unfortunately, long ago it was named Steuben County or the Salvation Army of Corning, but it is all Steuben County, and there is such a need. So let's talk about some of these events, and we'll start with the first one. It's kind of a fun event, Christmas in July Filler Up campaign.
Right. So it's a little bit like our kettle campaign.
Sure.
It's just a way for us to raise a little money, but also you get to support some of your favorite businesses in town. So Connors Mercantile, the Butcher's Son, and Bottles and Cork will all have kettles on their counter for the next week, right? It's all next
Starting
week.
on Monday, yep. The 22nd.
And they are competing against one another to see who can raise the most in 1 week
Right.
for the Salvation Army.
A friendly competition. I would also highlight, it's not too late to sign up.
No, yes.
So if you are a business, an organization, you just want to take on a coworker and have some fun with it, please do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are the prizes? What do they win if they win?
I don't know. There's a surprise.
I know.
I can't remember. There's so much going on. I think it's bragging rights. How's that?
Bragging rights.
That's the most important part.
We'll make you a very fancy sign.
Yeah, and I will, of course, bring up the winner numerous times on the program for what that's worth.
Oh, yes.
But if you're interested, I would recommend that you call Marlene. Her number is 607-216-4099. And if you have any questions about what we talk about today and you want to find out more, you can reach me at the number on the bottom of the screen and I can get you that information. So if you want to sign up for the Christmas in July Filler Up campaign, please do by calling Marlene or getting a hold of me.
And if you want to just support those businesses and throw $1 or $2 in that bucket to help them win and help them get those bragging rights, we'd love to see you in there.
Yes, absolutely. And then we've got a busy week next week.
We do.
We've got the Christmas, so that's the Christmas in July Filler Up campaign. Now we also have the Christmas in July, I would call it a celebration.
Absolutely. I love that we get to have Christmas in July
I know.
because it's really cold and the weather's sort of terrible here in December.
Exactly.
So I'm delighted that we're having Christmas in July just a little bit.
And this is for all of those people, like you said, it's always so cold, but all those people that volunteer at Christmas to ring the bell. We're trying to get ahead of the curve because, like we said, last year it was a struggle at the kettle campaign. So we're trying to get volunteers to sign up this early for bell ringing, but also it's a little fundraiser, some raffles, 50-50, some refreshments.
Baskets, there's some really fun stuff.
Yeah, and I didn't get the scoop. I think they were keeping a little quiet on some of the great baskets.
Yeah, I think I see pictures of them,
yes.
but I don't know if we're allowed to tell you.
Yes.
But I will tell you, they are great baskets, and this is a free event. So you get to come, you get to enjoy some refreshments, maybe participate in some of those little mini fundraisers, and get a chance to sign up right now. And funnily enough, there's some competition for the best bell ringing slots, which is the very that's our favorite kind of problem.
Right.
But also, do you have an organization or a church that would like to take a day? Hey, now's the time. Let us know. We would love to have your organization sponsor a day and help us raise money. And all of the money that we raise in these kettle campaigns stays our local community and goes towards those human services that we provide.
And you can't say that about all charities, and that's very impressive with the Salvation Army. And you mentioned that an organization, every year we talk about on the program, it's so much fun, is when the Republicans of Corning take on the Democrats of Corning. And, there can be so many more opportunities like that when Rotary Club is doing it. So if you are a part of a church, part of an organization, or just as an individual want to sign up, get down there and the getting's good, as they say, for these time slots.
Well, and maybe your business wants to take a day. We're happy to put up a sign that says, hey, this business is sponsoring the kettle ringing today. We'd love to support any way that you want to help out our community. We are happy to work with you on that.
I know it seems early, but let's face it, Christmas will be here in no time. So the event is Wednesday, July 24th. It's next Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Just stop in, say hi, bring your calendar so you know which day you want to sign up for. But the need is there for the Salvation Army, but also just the fun of it. It's so Christmas,
It is.
I can't think of Christmas without hearing the bell ringing.
It's a very traditional part of Christmas, especially in Corning with the bell ringers out on Centerway Square every year. It's a lot of fun. We would love to, and we'd love to bring in some groups that haven't done that with us before. Does your church have a choir that wants to come sing while you bell ring or something like that? We'd love that. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, and trust me, it's a rewarding experience. You'll have such a great time. You'll make new friends as they stop by, and it's not Christmas until you do.
Well, and you don't have to be an organization. It even can just be your family. It can be a new family holiday tradition every year, a way that you give back. And it's only a couple hours of your time, costs you nothing.
Right.
And it's a way that does really make a difference in our community.
And we talk about the commercialization of Christmas so much. This always comes up at Christmas. This is your way to give back to the community, and I can't recommend it enough. But also, before we talked about Christmas now, but let's take a step back. We've got a very big celebration coming up in September.
We do.
We got to mark your calendar because I'm going to tell you a lot more about it on this program.
But we want you to save the dates.
We want you to save the date. So I'll let you take over about the special celebration.
Absolutely. So on September 8th, we are going to have our first annual Salvation Army Barbecue Picnic Benefit to celebrate 140 years of the Salvation Army in Corning.
Think of that number.
Right. The Salvation Army has been serving our community for 140 years. So we really want to celebrate that. So we are going to have a barbecue. We're going to have raffles and baskets, a silent auction. There'll be live music. It's going to be really, really fun. It's September 8th from 1 to 4. Corning Catering is working with us on this. There'll be raffles. We're looking for sponsors still if you'd like to sponsor us in any way. If you'd like to donate a basket to the silent auction or anything else to the silent auction, we would be delighted to talk to you about that. If you want to participate in that as a sponsor or donate something, you can reach out to Mick at 607-684-2006. Or again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to the number at the bottom of your screen and you can go through Frank. But we just want you to mark that on your calendar. And what a great way to kind of celebrate the end of summer.
Right.
One last big blowout. It's family friendly. Bring your family. There'll be barbecue for purchase, and you can take it if you're in a hurry that day. You can just grab it as takeout. But we hope you'll come and spend time, enjoy the music, enjoy all the other things that we'll have going on, and really have one big blowout at the end of the summer to really celebrate.
Exactly, and the music's going to be great. And I'm going to give away all the information later on, but we're still obviously in the planning stages, but it's already coming together really nicely. And I think it's going to be something to look forward to every year.
I think so too. I think it's going to be one of those new traditions. You know, we have those traditional things that happen every year in Corning, and I think this is going to be one of those things that joins that list of things you don't want to miss every
Exactly.
year.
And just before we go, I think it's, we hear about fundraisers all the time, and a lot of times they kind of seem like work. But these are actual fun fundraisers, These are events that you actually want to participate in. And that's why I think the Salvation Army is unique in that way, that you're doing great things for the community and you're also having a good time doing it.
Absolutely.
Can't beat that. So, Angela, thanks so much for being on the show. And I know we'll have you on again soon as some of these events near, okay?
Anytime.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Look at that beautiful view of Marcus Street. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. And I'm going to do something here. Breaking news from our interview. There's been new businesses added to the Filler Up campaign for the Salvation Army of Corning. So we now can, it's a friendly competition, but you can go to these locations, and while you're there making a purchase, you can donate to the Salvation Army of Corning in their kettle, which will be prominently displayed. Here are the businesses. We mentioned Butcher's Son. Sorges is now involved. Mooney's, Connor's Mercantile, Bottles and Corks, and Anelio's Pizza. So please, next week, help out the Salvation Army of Corning. Stop into one of those locations and make a donation for all the good that they do. Okay, one other announcement. I'm going to try something here on the fly because we got a pretty cool picture, and I can't do it. So first I'm going to show you this, which is, I understand, is an event that already happened. Trust me, I am well aware. But we're going to see if we can do this. No, okay, I can't show it. We had a beautiful picture, and for whatever reason, I knew I couldn't do it quickly on the fly. I apologize. It was a beautiful picture of Keuka Lake because we received a wave. Hello from Keuka Lake. Morning coffee with a view. Sorry, I have to normally have photos pre-planned, and I thought maybe I had it figured out, but I did not. So I apologize over that. And I don't think it'll come up that way either. Nope. All right. Shouldn't do stuff like that live on air. Next up, so many comments to get to. Here we go. I think until the second coming of Christ, we will not have complete trust and truth. Thank you very much for that comment. A different comment from a different viewer. Our number one priority is getting Trump elected and ousting the deep state players from this government. Then and only then will we know the truth. Another comment from a different viewer. Obama now seems very concerned about Joe's ability to win. For someone living in the retirement destination of Washington, D.C., he clearly has to be worried about property values when all those Republicans move into town. Thank you very much. And finally, another comment from a viewer, so many coming in. The Dems will keep Biden at the top of the ticket until the very last minute that they can. They didn't tell Biden to fake COVID in an effort to be able to remove him now. They needed him to recharge from the more intense schedule they put him through recently, in the effort to show that the debate was a fluke. They are probably still working through the deals, being presented to Kamala to gracefully allow someone other than her to be at the top of the ticket while making sure the vetting period is as short as possible before the candidate that they have always planned is announced. There's a lot to dissect there. There's two schools of thought, and I don't disagree at all, Ken, that every day that goes by, it's worse for the Democrats before he drops out, if he does drop out. But I agree to your point. The longer that they go, the less time to vet. Look, if they would have announced a different candidate, even if it was Kamala, if they would have announced before the Republican convention, there would have been time for speeches against that candidate. Now they'll be fighting for airtime to vet the VP candidate if it's not Harris at the top of the ticket. So, yeah, it may actually have gone so far that it's starting to play in their favor. Now, we're learning that once defiant, Biden is now, quote, soul searching. These are all the anonymous sources we're hearing from. This one specifically talking to Reuters, someone requesting anonymity. His soul searching is actually happening. I know that for a fact. He's thinking about this very seriously. It feels like it's a matter of when, not if. Coming from CNN, Biden's top officials believe he must drop out as he becomes increasingly isolated. The next 72 hours are big, one Democrat governor said, and that was yesterday. This can't go on much longer. Everyone is saying it privately. People see and feel the walls are closing in. Ooh, interesting. The walls are closing in. They used to say that about Trump nonstop during his presidency. The walls are closing in on Trump. It's interesting to be used here in this scenario for Biden. Another top Democrat close to the White House described Biden as having becoming exceptionally insulated and isolated. Multiple sources said some of the most senior advisors to Biden face the ire of the president's family in the aftermath of the debate. Biden's campaign is scheduling an all-hands-on-deck meeting as this defection grows. Democrat leaders signaled in their most direct terms this week that they're prepared to leak their private conversations with Biden until he drops out. And that's what I was referencing with Obama and Nancy Pelosi. They got approval on that being leaked. Don't think for a moment that was actually just leaked by some type of great journalism. That they knew exactly what they were doing. It was a signal that we want you out, Biden, but we don't want to have to give the press release. We don't want to have to give the press statement. To use a military saying of unknown origin, the beatings will continue until morale improves. It's building to a head this weekend, and we should have the moment. Or have the movement. So I think many members, out of respect for Biden, will likely wait, but a few will not because, I think what they don't want is to create any perception by Biden that the opposition is over. And I think that perception happened for about a week until the assassination attempt on Trump. We could get some signal from the White House that, they're preparing a major announcement or something like that, and then everything would freeze. But, short of that, I think there will continue to be some forward motion by members of Congress who want to maintain pressure. I see that even Joe Scarborough, which in the scheme of things means absolutely nothing when it comes to, if you want to call it endorsement or non-endorsement, calling for him to step aside. But according to the New York Times, several people close to Biden said that the president has begun to accept the idea that he may not be able to win in November and may have to drop out of the race, bowing to the growing demands of many anxious members of his party. Though one source close to the president said that Biden has not yet made up his mind on whether or not to leave the race, another said that the reality is setting in and that Biden might very well make an announcement soon endorsing Harris as his replacement. This account is based on interviews with 4 people close to the president, all of whom described the situation as extremely delicate and spoke on the condition of anonymity to avoid offending the president. Mr. Biden remained in isolation at his vacation home in Delaware after being diagnosed with COVID on Wednesday. They have a piece. We got to take a break. My goodness. There's a piece at CNN, Inside the Doom Loop of Joe Biden's campaign. Multiple leading Democrats tell CNN they feel caught in what one described as a doom loop, with every move to keep Biden in or push him out, further destroying their chances against Trump. That is what I think is one of the very fascinating points of this, that while Trump is having a lot of great attention on him from the speech last night, the convention in general, his pick of Vance, his survival of that assassination attempt, that he is showing himself triumphant, while Biden, on the other hand, has his own party turning on him, which is so rare. As you know, someone that watched politics for so long, you know that Democrats normally rally around each other. But what happened this time? They saw the writing on the wall that he couldn't win the election. So it was never about his health and about the security of this country. They never called on him to resign when they saw the obvious issues for the last 2.5, 3 years. Never once did they call for him to step down then. It only mattered to them when it came down to election time, when it came down to whether or not he would win the election. That's very telling. We've got more comments coming in. When we come back, we'll read those. Man, the show's almost over, so stay with us. Wrapping things up here on Frankly Speaking. And we are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Some comments from viewers. Trump's track record is obvious. He's accomplished more for America in 4 years of daily obstruction, lies, and propaganda put forth by the deep state Democrats than any other president ever has. No Democrats in November of 2024. Thank you, viewer, another viewer. The Democratic pick for VP with Joe bowing out will be as exciting as Trump's pick for VP as the Dems. If they choose wisely, things could get very interesting. Yeah, I agree. That is a very important pick. It could breathe new life into fundraising and bring on a much closer race. Another comment. Oh, yes. Okay, Frank, I think I missed the phone number for, I believe the name was Mick, for donations for the barbecue in September. Yes, absolutely. Hold on. Let me grab my paperwork here. That's in regards to the Salvation Army. So grab your pen. And I will text this to you as well. But for anybody else who may have missed it, the Salvation Army is holding a big barbecue picnic benefit to celebrate 140 years of the Salvation Army being in Corning. It's going to be held on September 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. The food by Corning Catering. And we're looking for raffles, sponsors, things like that. So here is the number. And again, I will text this to you. But for those others that may have missed it, 607-684-2006. So again, 607-684-2006, and ask for Mick. I think that's her direct line. So thank you very much if you're going to take part in that. The Salvation Army does such amazing work, and I know I stress that a lot, and in full disclosure, I'm the chairman of the advisory board, but I see the numbers, and you heard Angela talk about those numbers, and there is a great need. Okay, so on the other end of the spectrum, we hear that everybody is kind of coming to the idea that Biden may resign. But no, one source says that Biden is furious about the growing calls to get him to exit, which could make him more, for lack of a better term, stubborn and stay in this thing. Lots of anger towards some donors for talking of money drying up if he doesn't quit, toward what they see as muted support for President Obama, and towards Dem leaders who, one source says, are hiding behind statements. If they want him out, they'll have to push him out. Costa added that Biden feels disrespected, but that no one has figured out how an effective way to quiet this drift of nervous Democrats away from Biden, and know many Democrats want Biden to just break at some point. It is, think about that. The money's drying up. People are turning on him. Maybe he digs his heels in and says, I'm not going to be... He's a man who's felt disrespected throughout his whole career in some ways, or not getting the respect he deserves. So maybe this is a bridge too far. Interesting. CNN put together, I'm not going to go through it, but what would happen if Biden decided to leave the race? A growing collection of Democrats, you know all about that. It would not be an easy process since Biden is already the presumptive nominee and the overwhelming choice of primary voters. He faced little opposition in the primaries, and the fact that he won nearly all the party delegates means it's very unlikely he'd be forced out of the race against his will. Maybe they should give it to the guy that got one electoral or one delegate. I'm America Samoa. Remember that weird story? This isn't the 60s. Voters choose the nominee. He is the nominee, said David Axelrod. Well, if he's a nominee, they should be thinking, boy, they painted themselves into a corner. It's as simple as that. Who would replace Biden, CNN asks? You can assume, for instance, Harris would be at the top contender to head the ballot in such a scenario, but there could be other potential candidates who previously argued they could run a more effective campaign against Trump, like Gavin Newsom, who offered unqualified support for Biden after the debate. Could he challenge Harris at the convention? Settling on a replacement would be divisive and ugly. It would be up to the delegates to decide in a series of votes after frantic lobbying who to pick. On the Democrat side, there's also another group to consider, the superdelegates. Remember, again, I know I've said this a lot on the program, but you've got to remember, historically, Democrats have never trusted the voter, and specifically their own party, the Democrat voter. Look at the Bernie Sanders never having a chance against Hillary Clinton campaign. Why? Because the fix is already in, and they have superdelegates. That's a group of about 700 senior party leaders and elected officials who are automatically delegates to the convention based on their position. Under normal party rules, they can't vote on the first ballot if they could swing the nomination, but they're free to vote on subsequent ballots. They don't trust their voters. Now, quickly before we take a break and wrap things up, Ted Cruz, I think he's listening to the show. I'm just going to say it. He was on Hannity yesterday. He said, I predicted that 10 months ago, the Democrats are going to pull Joe Biden off the ticket. They're going to replace him with Michelle Obama, is what I predicted. And at the time, the corporate media went nuts, said I was a moonbat lunatic. I think it's north of 90% right now. You've got the entire Democratic Party that has come out against him. You've got Obama that's come out against him. You've got Chuck Schumer. You've got Pelosi. You've got Jeffries. You've got the donors. You've got the corporate media. You've got Hollywood. Like, everyone has aligned against him. Look, everyone who was paying attention knew a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that Biden's mental capabilities had diminished. You're right. No Democrat cared. They didn't care until they believed he was going to lose. So have you heard a single Democrat say the man is demented? He's not competent to tie his shoes? He shouldn't be commander-in-chief right now. I mean, listen, there comes a time where you take away the keys from Grandpa. In this case, those keys are attached to ICBMs. Yeah, they never cared. There'd still be no issue if that debate performance wasn't so bad, even though they've known for how long that he was at that mental capability. Another comment from a viewer before we go to break. Biden should be very careful of who he trusts at this point. The White House is full of vipers waiting to strike. Thank you very much. We got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Wrapping things up. Get those last minute comments in. Do you think Biden is still the nominee, still campaigning when we start the show on Monday morning? Let me know. We'll be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, just wrapping things up on this Friday morning edition. What a historic week. I would like to say, and I say humbly, I think we've had some very important shows, and that's because of you with all these great comments all week long. There is a piece at the New York Post by A.G. Ganarski. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, but release the delegates. If Democrats care about democracy, they'll have an open convention. For a Democrat party that spent 4 years repeating the mantra, democracy is on the ballot, it turns out that might not have been the case at all in its own nominating process. After a primary season in which only a few marginal candidates dared to challenge Joe Biden, nothing has changed. The COVID has led to reconsideration of Biden's political future. I know I'm trying to rush through this. Though the stubborn president may not want to go, he's being pushed by all the big names, and some say it could happen this weekend, giving political reporters who might be bored after Milwaukee something to do. Democrats have several ways to handle this, and some are more boring than others. There is a case to be made that Harris should be the party's de facto nominee. The pros: she's been one heartbeat away for 3.5 years. She would appeal to black voters and women, and she's a known quantity. And if Biden releases his delegates and leaves the presidency, all the better for this play. But the gambit's not without downside risk. The cons: she'd be running on the Biden-Harris legacy, which the re-election campaign has downplayed in favor of Project 2025 hysteria and personal attacks on Trump. Harris may have a honeymoon with mainstream media as the nominee, but there's scant evidence she would juice the ticket or stop the Trump surge. And there's less evidence she would stop the GOP from expanding the map to states that haven't been in place since Reagan. So with Harris not being a safer option than her boss, what could Democrats do? Here's a suggestion. throw the nomination open, and make what was intended to be a thoroughly staged, managed Democratic National Convention next month actually matter. Dispense with the canned speeches and syrupy video packages and warnings about the other side, and do what Democrats have tried to avoid in one preordained nomination cycle after another. Spend the first few days, pardon me, letting candidates from that reputedly very deep Democrat bench that we're lectured about all the time make their case to delegates who are free to vote their conscience. Would a contested convention be good for TV? You bet. It would give the next generation of Democrats a chance to stake a course for the party that really hasn't been able to in recent years with such strong steering currents towards Hillary and Joe Biden. Wow, we are out of time. Last comment from a viewer. I think it's only fair to the Democrats' support base to hold another primary vote of a handful of prospective candidates. My biggest concern is if the desperate stance of the Democrat Party could launch them to postpone the election somehow. Interesting. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for an amazing week of broadcasting here on Frankly Speaking. We'll be back Monday morning at 6 a.m. So join us every weekday morning at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, have a fun and safe weekend. We'll see you Monday morning. I look forward to it already.